Well, yeah, we're just doing the pre-show preamble. Hey, person on Twitch, if you like, tell us what part of the world you're listening to us from. Are you an NFT aficionado, and are you in the States, or are you in Australia, or are you somewhere else? That would be helpful to know. Or is it, or is Twitch just someone got it on in the background while they're washing dishes this time of night over there, Alicia?
I actually don't know what Twitch is. I see people talk about it all the time, but could you explain it to me?
Twitch is like a streaming platform that Jeff Bezos bought. Amazon own it, but it was really popular with gamers and whatnot. And then some of the massive streamers in the world, like Hasanabi, or who's the cousin of one of the, the nephew of one of the Young Turks, the guy who started the Young Turks. I mean, he's got millions and millions of viewers. So Twitch
why
is
is
really
it
popular.
associated with gaming?
Because that's what people were doing. They were streaming their gameplay.
And people want to watch that?
People do. It's massive.
Wow. So if somebody wants to watch somebody else playing a video game?
Yep. Search Minecraft on YouTube and you'll see how massive it is compared to conservation. Hello, Facebook. I hope you were the one who was just looking on migrating to Australia. I'm sorry about that muck up. Okay, time to do the countdown, and then we will get into the show proper. So here it comes. Hello, bird nerds. Yes, that's the opening screen, just so I know where to start the edit. Hi, bird nerds. I'm Grant. I'm a bird nerd. That's Alicia.
I'm also a bird nerd.
she's a proper bird nerd, and a amazing crypto techno blockchain enthusiast. And we're going to talk all about her project, which is get it right. Where am I pointing? There in her name there, Cosmic Birds NFT, or the Ornithia, the Cosmic Birds of Ornithia NFT project. Welcome to the Bird Emergency. Tell me. Hang on, if you're wanting bird stuff. We're bird adjacent, talking NFTs, but Alicia is variously described as an ornithologist, ecologist, wildlife biologist, and bird conservationist. And did her. It was your postgrad work, wasn't it? No, it was your doctoral.
No, it was a master's degree in ecology, evolution, and environmental bio from Columbia.
And that was titled, Oil Palm Expansion Drives Faunal Decline in the Pucallpa region of Peruvian Amazonia. So, yeah, that's what we will be discussing after we talk about NFTs. And forgive me.
Okay, we want to do NFTs first.
We're going to do NFTs first. First, I just want to get a bit of a background about you.
Sure.
Right, you did your master's at Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
What was your initial interest in undergrad? Like, did you go into undergrad wanting to do bird studies, or were you into something else?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I actually started out my career, or my undergrad degree. I was doing both like communications and media stuff and environmental science. And so, my idea at the time was I really wanted to be a science communicator. So, I had the idea of being the next Steve Irwin, which you may have ideas on coming from Australia. But I loved, the fact that he reached so many people. And I had this idea that, working for National Geographic or Animal Planet as kind of the, resident animal lover and, animal expert would be a really fun career. But what I noticed was throughout my undergrad, I did a lot of on camera work, and I was doing a lot of stuff with the media, and I really was not enjoying that half as much as my science classes. And so I just started gravitating more and more towards the hard science of really studying animals and studying ecology and conservation. And by the time I graduated, I kind of knew that I didn't want to do communications and media anymore, and I just wanted to full on like be a scientist. So right after graduating, I went to UCLA. So after graduating, I joined the Peace Corps as an environmental education volunteer because I kind of thought, so much of conservation work has to do with, community-based conservation. That was really my ethos. And so I really wanted to see, what is it like working with a community and living in this community and really kind of integrating and learning about it from that perspective. And while I was there is where I applied to the graduate program that I went to at Columbia. And so by the time I got there, I was like very, very excited to just fully just study animals and kind of go in the science direction.
Is there a difference between the Peace Corps and the Green Corps, or is it all?
Oh, Greenpeace is completely
No, no,
different.
no, no, not Greenpeace. But I've heard the term Green Corps being
I don't know what that
being a,
is.
is that's probably a general term that they might use for volunteers in
Yeah,
NGOs. But tell,
possibly. The Peace Corps is a government-run program in the United States. It was started by John F. Kennedy, and it was kind of like, hey, instead of a military service, do a volunteer service and go and serve other countries. And so it's a 2+ year commitment. I was in the Dominican Republic for 2.5 years, in a very small, like maybe 200 or 300 person village where everybody knew everybody and all my business. And I did environmental education, and it was like a community that was heavily dependent on a coral reef that was right in front of this town. And so we did a lot of conservation work and a lot of local initiatives, and it was a great experience. It was really fulfilling and really challenging.
um, have you kept in touch with
Oh yeah,
that
yeah.
village? Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Well, first, yeah, I lived with a host mom, and most people, what they do is after a few months of service, once they kind of get to know the community, they move out by themselves. I actually was the only volunteer in my cohort that didn't do that because I became really close with my host mom, and we just decided to stay living with each other. But yeah, I still have, and then I was honored to be asked to be like the godmother of like several people in the town. And for them being like a Catholic community, that's like a very big honor. And
yeah.
so, I still keep in touch with them. And before, when I was there was no like there was no cell service. We had electricity for a couple hours a day, but now like everybody's on Facebook. And so, and they all have cell phones. So I did my service from 2007 to 2009, and now it's a lot easier to keep in touch than it was when I first left. But I still regularly communicate with a lot of people from my town on Facebook and through WhatsApp.
Sounds a bit like my experience in the Philippines, where
Oh, cool.
everybody was using Facebook. Facebook was the internet, and
Yep.
they're all paying each other and buying goods with digital cash. But the
Oh, wow.
school, but the school didn't have access to the internet. right? So
Yeah,
uh,
no, that's very similar. I mean, the
weird.
fact that they have cell phones and stuff, if you saw the conditions in this town, it's surprising that they're on Facebook, you know?
Yeah. Oh well, certainly in a lot of places in the world, Facebook is the internet. They actually went in and put the infrastructure in because they
Yep.
profit off it.
Yep.
But yeah, okay. Before we get hardcore NFTs, uh, what was the process of getting from your work in the Dominican Republic? Like what were the conservation projects there?
Mhm.
And also from your experience, what were the conservation priorities in the Dominican Republic? And then we'll move on to Peru.
Yeah, so I that's a really great question. I think originally as a volunteer, I came in and I was supposed to, I mean, what's kind of funny about the Peace Corps is there's like a little bit of a, inside joke where it's like whatever you're assigned to is like not at all what you end up doing. So usually, you kind of have a concept of somebody asks for a Peace Corps volunteer. Usually it's a community group or an NGO. And in my case, it was Reef Check. So they wanted somebody there to kind of be able to communicate with the fishermen about reef conservation. And so I kind of came in with that mentality. And, you know, just the way that things are in those places, you really have to like make your own assessment. So I did like the first couple months, I did like a community diagnostic and I interviewed everybody and I saw what are the needs here and how can that align with conservation ideas. And it really over time didn't make sense for me to work with the fishermen. First of all, they were not going to listen to a woman. um, and so that was like first and foremost. Secondly, I'm not a fisherman myself, so they didn't really respect my, knowledge and, knowledge of ecology. And I was definitely coming from a different perspective. I didn't know the ocean or the fish like they did, but I knew conservation principles and what was happening to their reef.
So
But there was just a lot of resistance there.
was it an overfishing issue? Was it a bycatch problem? Was
Yeah,
it
so it was
methods destroying the
definitely,
reef?
yeah, it was definitely overfishing, and it was also just like ecotourism had come to this place. It's a beautiful like coral atoll, and
Yep.
it was like kind of getting developed for ecotourism, but the tourism wasn't really happening in a sustainable way, and a lot of people were still kind of overfishing and kind of needed to see that this is a more sustainable way to do things, is to kind of turn to ecotourism. But even the ecotourism was not being handled necessarily in a responsible way. Like these big companies from the city came in, they would bring people in on buses. There were no bathrooms anywhere, so people would like use the reef as their toilet. There was like the guides would bring like bread and they would just like throw bread around so the parrotfish would come. There were a
So
lot of things that they were
yeah,
doing that were not
e-
responsible.
everything that could be a problem was a problem.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
guessing.
So it was not, and the community wasn't really benefiting other than the few people who were leading as tour guides, because these buses would come in from Puerto Plata, which is like a city that was about 3 hours away. They'd come for a day trip, but they would literally like dock in our town, get straight onto boats, go out to the island, be there all day, and then come back and get straight back on the bus. Like they didn't do absolutely anything in our town. They didn't get the chance to, even buy artisan things from the community, nothing. There was like no benefit. And so a lot of people in the town had a very negative idea about the ecotourism. And so we
Yeah.
wanted to do better. But at the end of the day, what I realized was, while I was like, banging my head against the wall, trying to work with these fishermen, at the same time, I had the town was like 50% plus like youth under 18. There was just like a proliferation of children there, and they were desperate to work with me. They wanted to hang out with me all the time. They wanted me to come by the school. They were eager to learn what I had to say. And so I actually just really pivoted and started just working with the youth because I saw that as a great opportunity. And it was one where I just didn't have this uphill battle to work with people who didn't want to work with me. Meanwhile, I had these kids like begging me for something to do. So the main thing that I ended up doing was my biggest project there was I built a library. And the library was also kind of the home for all of our like environmental activities. So we had like an environmental youth group that kind of helped build the library. And then so I got grants. I built it from the ground up. So I got small grants, you know, coordinated the construction, got 1,500 Spanish language books donated, and carried them in myself on a motorcycle, with like probably 30 different trips. And so, because that's the only way into this town was like on a motorcycle taxi. And so, yeah, it was just a really, really cool experience. And then we did environmental murals. We did a trash cleanup project. We worked with the municipality to actually take the garbage in the town to a landfill instead of dumping in the ocean. And the kids just learned so much, and they were like sponges. They wanted to learn everything because in that town there was one teacher and like hundreds of kids, and they would only go to school for like 2 or 3 hours a day, and the rest of the time they were bored out of their minds and like looking for something to do. So it was really, really fun working with them.
So you're still in touch with that community. So
Yeah.
what's the state of play there now? How's the reef, uh, and how's the environmental awareness, and the activism from those kids from what, that's 10 or 12 years ago?
Yeah, it's hard to say from afar, but I have gone back and visited, and I will say that like there was still the trash can system that we put in. There was still even the trash bins that we installed. We installed like 40 of them, and a lot of people. I had a not only the environmental youth group is still meeting and still going. The library is still there. People are still using it. That's been huge because before you can have environmental education, you have to have basic education. And so, you know, the ability to just go somewhere and read. The reason why I got the idea to do the library in the first place was because I lived with, you know, this host mom, and she had lots of family members that were always with us. And her grandchild, who was about 6, was learning how to read in school. And I saw her one day, like practicing on the back of like an oatmeal box. And she was so desperate to learn to read that that was the only reading material she could find. And she had like found it and brought it over to practice reading. And I'm like, there's no books in this town. Like, we need books. That like that's the starting point before we can even talk about environmental education. Like, people need to be able to read and be able to, you know, have access to books.
And that's the reality in, so many places
Yeah.
in the world. So, you know, well, I know I get grumpy all the time about the things that we're not doing here and
Yeah.
what we could do better, sitting as a, you know, privileged middle class, colonial settler type white guy. Um,
That's a lot of
uh,
adjectives.
well, I mean, you know, we got to be honest about it. I've I've been to a lot places like you're talking about, and you know, I paid for the internet to get connected at a school. Uh, they had some books, but they were like 1950s and 60s stuff that reinforce all the bad
Oh,
stereotypes that we're all moving away from. So yeah,
right.
some of the problems are really basic. So yeah, I appreciate your efforts, and
Oh, thanks.
I'm sure those
Yeah, and
kids do.
the other thing to mention is that there were continued volunteers. So you can petition to have like other community volunteers come in that follow up your service.
Yeah,
And they've had a
carry
long,
it on and develop it.
yeah, so they've had other types of volunteers. I think they had a public health volunteer, a youth volunteer. So that community has been continuing to get support from the Peace Corps, which I think is really great for them. And you know, but as far as like the health of the reef, I really couldn't say because I haven't like gone back or known of anybody doing ecological studies to see is it better off today versus 12 years ago. But I do think that the community was moving away from fishing and towards ecotourism. So as long as the ecotourism could be done in a more responsible way, I do think that that was probably a better path than overfishing the reef.
Well, if you're one of the community that knows the answer to that, about the Dominican Republic, tell us in the comments, at some stage whenever you're checking out this conversation, or DM me at the Bird Emergency on Twitter. Not at the Bird Emergency, at Bird Emergency. Tag us, do whatever. However, just let us know if you know about the Dominican Republic. Before we get into NFTs, I just want to give a shout out. This photo, the picture behind me of the albatrosses on South Georgia Island, kindly given to me by Steph Burrell, who is working with BirdLife Marine. And of course, they're interested in all sorts of things about bycatch and overfishing and plastic pollution and all that kind of stuff. So, hi, Steph.
Is that wandering? Wandering?
They're royals, I believe. I think they're the Southern Royal albatross, and they're on South Georgia from memory. But yeah, thanks, Steph. Great photo, and thanks for letting me use it. And I hope everything's going fantastic with BirdLife Marine. Okay. NFTs. Let's start.
With... I thought we were going to talk about Peru, but am I talking?
Yes. I'm just mindful that we're going, and I'm not talking about anything to do with what I said we'd talk about.
Project. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
How did you get from the Dominican Republic into the Amazonian jungles in Peru?
Yeah, so when I was in grad school and I was just getting this degree in ecology and evolution, one of the things we had to do was a master's thesis that is like organized very much exactly like a PhD dissertation, but on a much smaller and shorter scale. So you spend like the summer between the 2 years doing your research, but I designed the project from start to finish myself, and went out and executed it entirely myself. And then I, wrote it up and published it and like defended it. And so what I would say about that experience was I was really interested in looking at bird diversity and how in the Peruvian Amazon, or just in the Amazon in general, oil palm expansion is a growing problem. And it's a problem that really all of the literature at the time was coming out of Southeast Asia, maybe 2 or 3 publications from tropical Africa and like 0 from the Amazon. And so this to me was like a really compelling thing, because there were all these arguments at the time to say that, hey, it's oil palm, that's like trees. So it's kind of the same as a forest. And there wasn't a lot of data to actually refute that, even though I think as an ecologist or anybody who knows about conservation could like sort of intuitively know that, a plantation of trees is not the same as a forest. But I really wanted to have some hard data for that. So I went out into the Peruvian Amazon with my, biologist assistant from Peru, from Arequipa, and we misnetted and banded, over 300 birds. And we were looking at what does the bird diversity and species assemblages and abundance all look like in the forest that's supposed to be there. And then we sampled at a different site, which was the oil palm plantation. And then we compared, how does bird diversity change as this landscape changes?
There's 2 sentences in the abstract which really hit it home to me what the problems were. Interestingly enough, the first study, your study was the first study to examine how oil palm agriculture affects avian diversity within the context of the Western Amazonia. So it's amazing, isn't it? There's always piles of money to cut stuff down and build a new press and whatnot, but we haven't got enough money to actually send biologists in there for on a regular basis. But I'll just read the 2 out, which I reckon were interesting and sad. Strikingly, less than 5% of all the captured species were common to both forest and oil palm habitat. So that's a massive problem. And then the results suggest that oil palm is particularly poor habitat for Amazonian birds, and that the species that are persisting in them or on them are of lower conservation value. So there you go. It's the problem in the nutshell. It's a shocking place to live, and the birds that live there aren't the ones that need to be looked after. That's basically basically the problem. So that must have been fantastic working
Oh,
in
it was a life-changing experience. And I mean, like, I really went out there completely like alone with my assistant and just found the only house really that was like by the forest edge and just asked these people like, can we stay with you? And it ended up that they were really living on like the forest edge. There was no, like, it was even more extreme than the Peace Corps. There was no running water, there was no bathroom, there was nothing. It was just like a house on stilts. We all slept in the same room on like piles of hay, and it was pretty crazy. But what ended up happening was that a bunch of loggers came into that same area, and they also saw that it was the only house, and so they're like, "Can we stay here too?" So we were actually staying there with like about 6 or 7 loggers, which
it
was
would have been fun.
interesting.
It would have
Yeah,
been fun.
yeah.
If you're interested in looking at journals and studies, this is in global ecology and conservation. It's open source, so you can get hold of it and check it out. I'll of course link to it. But before we go into NFTs, your co-author on the paper.
Yeah.
Um, who is that, and where are they?
Oh,
What are they
so
doing now?
um like Dr. Ko,
Leon Pin Co.
yeah, he's actually a really kind of well-known conservationist that had done a lot of research on oil palm plantations. So he actually didn't participate in any of the design or the study or anything. It was only after I finished the study that I reached out to him because I had referenced his papers so many times in my research. He was just like the one person doing this.
Yeah,
And so I asked him if he would collaborate on the actual publication. So he helped me mostly with like the writing and the editing to prepare it for publication, but he wasn't really involved in the research actually.
yeah. No, I just wanted you to bring him up because I noticed that when I was reading reading the paper and going through your references,
Mm-hmm.
I thought, wow, so much stuff, you know.
Yeah, he's
So
really the one who was just studying oil palm like crazy over in Southeast Asia. And now he's a really interesting guy. He's turned his attention almost completely to conservation drones. So he's like has a whole side thing where he's
yeah,
using drones for
population
conservation.
density and everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's amazing. I, I'm hoping to be able to talk to him, and that nexus now. This is where technology is really exciting, isn't it? The nexus with drones for population management, and also AI and species identification, soundscapes, monitoring, meshing it all together. It's a really exciting time for
Yeah, I
conservation
agree.
management and research. So,
Yeah, and I don't know if
um,
you've seen some of these like migration maps lately that are
yeah,
based on like radar ornithology.
yeah, it's amazing that
Yeah.
um, oh, look, I should have written it down. I didn't think we were going to go here in this chat, but the person who puts out um, there's one in Europe and there's one in the US who put out their nightly uh, uh, results from their radar
Oh, cool.
scans, and actually tell us how many birds were moving through the flyway that night.
That's awesome.
Amazing stuff,
Yeah.
and now they're getting to the point where they can actually tell you pretty much what they were, whether they were buntings or
Oh, wow.
whether they were storks or whether they were swifts. It's
Amazing.
amazing. It's amazing what's moved on in the last few years. So, all right,
Great.
as promised, gang. Alicia, what is an NFT?
Okay, well, NFT stands for non-fungible token. But essentially, kind of in a nutshell, it's sort of an asset that it has like a authentication that is authenticated on a ledger, and the ledger is a blockchain. So the way that I would just kind of explain the difference between like fungible and non-fungible to kind of get down to basics is like $20 bill is a $20 bill no matter what you do with it, right? Like I could give you a 20, it's the same as another 20. But if I gave you a rare piece of art, like that's very different than if I gave you a different rare piece of art. And so non-fungible just means that it's a unique asset for whatever reason, whether it's the authentication or what this image looks like. It doesn't have to be an image. That's kind of like the typical way people think about it, as like a digital image, but it can also be anything. It could be, a song. It could be like a medical record. It could be a signature. It could be anything. And what makes it non-fungible and what makes it special is the fact that it has this authentication that is fixed in time.
So I want to try and work through some of the definitions.
Sure.
Okay. That's a book, right? And it's a book. Sorry, the green screen mucks it up.
Yeah, the green screen, it looks so weird. I'm like, it's an invisible book.
Yeah, it's because it's got green on the book, so I should have picked a different colour. But it's a book. Now, they probably produced 10 to 15,000 of these things in the first run. So even though this is a unique copy, all of those 10,000 are the same. So so whoever buys one, they've all got the same thing, right? Even though each one of them is a different thing.
Yeah.
Right? So we've got there. But I can't make this my cockatoo coffee mug. I can't turn that into an NFT, can I?
You actually can. You can actually take anything in real life and turn it into an NFT.
Okay. How would I turn this physical thing here, this particular one, rather than the design, into an NFT?
Yeah, so you could, I'm not sure because I've never actually turned anything in real life to an NFT, but I know that you can. So I think the first thing would be maybe either to photograph it or to just basically you just
but see, that's what I'm getting at. Okay. Because I've seen all these promo things about they're turning a piece of Banks. I don't think it was a Banksy bit of art, but someone's bit of art into an NFT. Well, they're not turning the art into it. They're turning a representation of the art into NFT.
That could be. Honestly, I don't know enough about turning physical objects into NFTs. I do know that people have done it. My assumption would be that they photograph it, but I could be wrong about that. So I don't feel informed enough to say, but I do know that physical objects get turned into NFTs, and what makes it an NFT is that unique authentication. So it's kind of like with your book analogy, if you were to have an autographed copy, that becomes special. And then now that book is not the same as the other book that's sitting right next to it, right? Because it has something special about it. And that's kind of more analogous to an NFT.
But there's a trust thing, isn't there? Because if I had this book and I signed it on the frontis page, okay, that's unique. But if I signed a different one in the back, that's also unique. I could make that an NFT, but they're the same bloody book, right?
Right. So, that makes sense. But I think what's unique that I think a lot of people miss about NFTs. So there's NFTs and that authentication process, and you can kind of turn anything to an NFT. Like, so for example, people are turning medical records into NFTs because there is like an authentication behind it that is really valuable. So there's that type of NFT, which I think is not going anywhere. I think that authentication on the blockchain process is going to become like a part of our daily life when we don't even realize that half the things we're interacting with are going to be NFTs. Separate from that, there's the concept of an NFT collection, which has a very different sort of concept around it. And I can talk more informed probably about that.
Yeah. Well, that's why I brought it up, because there's all this stuff where the marketing and the jargon, your hospital record, which is supposed to be a unique and secure document, that is very different in concept to Paris Hilton's apes, right?
Right. Well, I
But
don't know if
but they
she
use
has
it.
apes, but there are
But they,
apes there. Yeah.
they use the same technology. I mean,
Yep.
that's really where we're getting
Yeah.
at.
So it's
Li-
really what it is like a ledger. Like that's
yeah,
what makes NFTs special is the authentication process. Now, like the NFT collections and the concept behind that and the community behind that, I can talk about.
yeah, and
Just to get
we're
down to
going
the
to get specific. We're going
yeah.
to get specific again. I just want to talk in general terms again. Just one more bit. You mentioned a song.
Mhm.
Now, it's got to be the release of the song, I think, or how it is distributed that would be an NFT, wouldn't it? So that it might be it's a song that you undertake to to only replicate in a manner to be distributed like MP3 or an MP4 file, and so there would only be one file of that song, and that's the NFT. Is that what we've
No, I
got?
think what it would be because like this is what I think a lot of people get confused by is like why would somebody pay all of this money for like the Bored Ape Yacht Club ape number 81 when you could actually just right click and save that image and use it yourself. So it's the same concept if you had an NFT song, somebody is the primary owner who has the authenticated song on the blockchain and then other people can listen to it. They can save it to their computer, they can do what they want, but only one person actually is the authenticated owner of that asset. So what it would be like a better analogy for this would be to say like, when I was in college, I had in my dorm a poster of Van Gogh's Starry Night. Like I had the same image. I got to enjoy it in my college dorm, but did I have the original Van Gogh? No. So
Yeah,
it's a similar concept
yeah.
to that where it's like
Well,
one person has the original
yeah,
and
but
everybody else has a copy.
yeah, everything else is just a representation of it. It's just a copy, as you say. Like I can understand it more with MP3s. I would have thought that if there was an MP3 or an MP4, like a video file or something, that was the NFT. To me, the value would be that it then can't be replicated because you can lock it up. Other
Mm-hmm.
people can listen to it, but only through you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh,
Right.
otherwise, you've just got that copy of the book, this copy of the book in your bookshelf, and everyone else has got the same book
Right.
with a different signature in their bookshelf, but they're no bloody different, right? That
Yeah.
it
So I
you
guess
know,
like if you were, a fan of a specific, band or, music group, there would be a certain sense of ownership to say, hey, I bought that song. I
yeah,
knew about this group before they were
that's right.
famous. And that song belongs to me, even though millions of people listen to it and have that song saved on their computer. I'm the first one who owns this song.
Or
So I
or
think that's the
they
concept.
or they produced one copy of the vinyl in red, and I have it.
Yeah. Yeah. It
That
could be
right
something like
that
that too. Yeah.
so that's how I sometimes struggle with the whole idea about the collective thing. If there's only one, that's it, right?
Hmm.
But if they produce 10 of them, well, then the value of the one is
Hmm.
diminished because there are 10,
Right.
but there are
Well, then
only
there
10,
are
right?
NFTs where people will produce like, oh, this is a art piece that I did, and there's 10 of them. They
Yeah,
don't always have to be one of one
yeah,
uniques. A
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
the
yeah,
times they are, but they
yeah,
don't have to be.
yeah. So just wanted to sort of get through that because a lot of the misconceptions about what NFTs are that there's this one, like the Bored Ape, there's only one. Well, having a photocopy of a screenshot off the computer is different to having the NFT on your computer. But then again, you can't put your NFT anywhere except on something that is a phone or a computer or a,
Mhm.
you can't actually put your NFT on the wall.
I mean, the thing is when you go into the blockchain and you go into, what I'm calling the ledger,
Yeah,
you're the
yeah,
only
yeah,
owner of
yeah.
that.
But that, but that's what I'm trying to get across with the. It's a conceptual thing, because you and I can't book an air ticket and go to the blockchain and look at your bit of the blockchain and your NFT, because it's distributed across.
But you can look at your asset on the Ethereum
On a
blockchain.
screen. Yeah, yeah, no, but
yeah, but
yeah,
it's all through
but
technology.
it is conceptual. That's what I'm getting
Yeah.
at. You and I can't go, right. I'll meet you at the blockchain, right? We'll go and have a coffee
It's
at
not
the
a
blockchain.
physical place.
Yeah,
That's
it's not. That's right.
which is why it's like why people also talk about the metaverse, because it is like sort of this like universe that is living through the technological medium, and it's kind of like through that, like you said, there's not a physical place, but there is a place. It's just through your computer. It's not a physical place.
It's just the Sims, only owned by the Zuckerberg. So
yeah.
Don't get me started on that. That's a whole other thing. Like,
people go, the metaverse actually is not directly linked with Mark Zuckerberg. Like he's trying to.
I know he's trying to own it.
But the metaverse is everything. It's all of this stuff.
Yeah. And again, look, I'm always breaking down what's PR and what's not, and what's buzz to sell something. Hey, someone was telling me the other day that I should get a VR headset and get into some new platform because we can have a meeting there, right? You can have meetings there, and I go, I've got StreamYard, I've got Zoom. What's the difference? It looks different, but we're still going to have a conversation. So what's the difference, right? It's just a different way of doing it.
Similar to, like, I don't know if you have ever seen this interview with on the David Letterman show where he's interviewing Bill Gates. And I'll send it to you if you haven't seen it. It's really good. And it's from 1995. And he's sort of asking him, like, what is this internet thing? Like, I don't really get it. Yeah. And Bill Gates is trying to kind of explain it. And he's saying, like, well, you can chat with like-minded people. And he's like, well, I call it my friends. And he's like, well, you can find out the latest stats from the, you're racing like aficionado. He's like, well, I have a hotline I call for that.
I've got a
magazine subscription. And so he kind of just goes through, and thing by thing, he's like, that already exists. It's a very similar thing with the metaverse and Web3, is that it's really hard to explain how this is different. And I think we're only just starting to see the tip of the iceberg. But I think the people that have really, really dug in and really done a lot of research and kind of are actually seeing how it's playing out, it becomes kind of like, it's a hard thing to actually explain, but it is, you can feel that there's a difference. And I definitely personally feel that there's kind of like this, like, I feel like I'm on the, kind of, we're on this like precipice where things, it does feel different. It reminds me of, because I was in, probably 13, 14, I was in middle school when AOL and the chat rooms came out, and like people first started getting dial up in their homes. And I remember like really feeling like this is different and something is like changing here. And so in some ways, like, I might not be being the most articulate spokesperson for this, but I can say that it's going to change things in ways that we can't really explain.
I agree. I felt the same way. I think it was 1993 or 4 when I was studying horticulture. It was probably a year or two beforehand. I was an early adopter with a mobile phone and carrying my laptop around everywhere to check, to basically to read articles on Netscape Navigator.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And Opera before that. So I can't think exactly when, but I know I was doing horticulture, and we used to have to, there are only about 8 computers that we could get on the internet, and you had to line up and book it and whatnot. And it was, Windows 3.1 I had a DOS. I had a DOS computer that was networked way back, way back. So I understand that it's changing and that it's going to be easier and perhaps more interesting. But in the end, a meeting and a conversation is still a meeting and a
Oh,
conversation.
sure, yeah.
So that's the
Yeah,
only
and the same
point
thing goes
I
for
want to
like,
get across. Is
yeah,
that
that conversation with Bill Gates, for example, he was saying like, you can stream this baseball game live through the internet, and he's like, well, I can also listen to it on the radio or watch it on TV.
yeah,
And it's true. Like people
yeah.
still
It's
watch
just a
games.
different way to experience the
Yeah.
same thing. That's really what I,
Yep.
look, I'm a fair bit older than you, Alicia, and I just detail when
Yeah.
I got a funny feeling. I've been waiting for Web 3.0 since about 2010. I think I was getting all the computer magazines that were telling me about what Web 3.0 is going to do, and I'm still waiting for all those applications that
Yep.
and they're still talking about it. The same applications,
Yep.
different UIs,
Yeah.
but they're still talking about something that they were telling me about 15 years ago, or.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I think some things in technology move so much faster than we ever expected. Like the smartphones just like took
If you're
off and
making
took
money
over
out
our
of
life.
it,
Yeah.
if they're making money out of it the way it is, why spend money to make it any different? You just wait until you've
But
squeezed
Solana's actually talking about developing a phone that operates on the blockchain, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is that, like, my dad actually studied robotic engineering. And when he studied that, they were talking about, robots doing things for us by the 90s. And it's like, look, we're still here today, and we're just starting to get kind of like home robots in our houses. And so some things, I think the technology takes a lot longer than people expect. So,
and not everyone wants it, right?
yeah.
I mean, I don't want a robot washing my dishes. I quite like washing the dishes. I can put my headphones on and ignore everybody else and wash the dishes. And
well, my first experience with a home robot is I have this Google Home that's kind of set up with my lights. And so I can actually turn off my lights from bed, or I go, okay, Google, turn off all lights. And it's like, it reminds me of like those commercials where you would clap on and clap off.
Okay, I can't resist it. I've got our conversation in my headphones, so Google didn't hear that. But let's just have a bit of fun.
Okay.
Hey Google, what's an NFT? This is real time, folks.
Did she tell you?
No, I'm still waiting. Hey Google, stop. Google did nothing. So there we go. That's how good it is.
NFTs don't exist.
Okay, let's try another one. Let's just have a bit of fun. Hey Google, what's a wanker?
Wanker is used as a noun in British English as a vulgar slang to mean a contemptible person, used as a general term of abuse.
Did you hear that?
I didn't hear it. You'll have to repeat it.
Hey Google, what's a wanker?
This is the definition of wanker. Vulgar slang. A contemptible person, used as a general term of abuse.
A general term of abuse. That's
pretty good. Or in Australia, it's also endearment. Oh, he's a good wanker. Or
You're lucky to be called a wanker by Grant.
Yeah. But if you're a stupid wanker, that's not a good thing, right?
That's not a good thing.
Right.
Then it's a term of abuse.
But hey, Web 2.0, Google couldn't tell me what an NFT was, so we're still not on the precipice, right? But he could tell me what a wanker was, or she could tell me what a wanker was. So,
well, one is much more well established than the other.
Sorry, that was pointless but fun. Okay, let's talk about your NFTs. Let's get the stream on. Actually, as I bring them on, I want you to tell me what got you into this whole idea of starting your own collection of NFTs, and let's talk about the aim, the purpose of these ones. and then
Yeah,
we'll
I
wrap
can
about it a bit
definitely
more.
give like a quick summary too of before I get into my collection specifically, just the concept of an NFT collection. I think what a lot of people don't understand is that the image is sort of like a token, and it's really just that. It's not the image that matters. What matters is that that is your kind of membership card almost into a community. And the biggest part of these NFT collections is really the community behind it. So there's a lot that goes into an NFT collection, and you'll hear people use the term utility a lot. And utility kind of refers to, you know, what do we get out of this purchase of this token? And a lot of the times, you know, it is community. A lot of the times it's art. It's just the beauty of the art. You know, some people do fine art NFTs and they're just gorgeous on their own. A lot of people will add, you know, this ability to, okay, this is your ticket into a specific sort of game. Or this is you earn by having this NFT, you're earning a certain cryptocurrency. So the creators themselves decide on what the utility for that NFT collection is. And so one of the things that I find to be, you know, really fun about NFT collections is that when you first buy a collection during launch, you actually don't know what you're going to get. So there's all these rarity components to it, where let's say with Bored Apes Yacht Club, let's say that the gold chain and the red hat are really rare. Now, if you bought during launch, you would be buying this NFT behind a veil of invisibility. So you might buy, you know, spend $100 on a new NFT and then turn around and you got a common one and it's worth $100 the next day. But a lot of the times after a launch, if you got that rare combination of the red hat and the gold chain, now you have one of the rarest in the collections, and it's sort of a scarcer asset. So it's very similar to a concept of like collecting baseball cards or, you know, things like that, where you buy the pack and you don't really know what's in it. And so buying during launch is really fun and exciting because you might buy, you know, one or two and not know what you're going to get. And you might find out the next day that when it's revealed to you that this is actually like a rare one in the collection. And I think that that's really fun. And so it reminded me a lot of birding. And so one of the things that I've integrated into my collection is the concept of rarity in Ornithia is analogous to rarity of the birds in the real world. So these bird families are much more kind of oriented around, like, you know, there's hundreds of hummingbird species and doves and pigeons. So those are the most common in the collection. Whereas there's actually only going to be one shoebill. There's only going to be a few flamingos. So I've actually taken that concept of rarity that's kind of central to NFT collections, but rather than just choosing randomly what's rare, I've actually made it kind of tied to birds in the real world, which I think is really fun.
And I'm glad you mentioned that it's fun and that it's a community, because for all that conversation, the preamble conversation we had, I can get on board with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It is like baseball cards, right?
Yeah.
It's not changing the world in any way other than the different way that it's delivered. But if someone's a baseball card collector and they bought something 20 years ago and it cost a penny, use a UK or a American term, 5 cents maybe here in Australia, and now it's worth $30, that's a massive increase in its worth. It's still only a piece of cardboard with printing on it. But if they want to do something with that $30, they can do something good.
Right.
Right?
So one of the
that's how I
concepts
see
is
the
that,
situation.
it's that collector mentality.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many parallels for me as a person who's always loved birds and is a birder. I always think about so not only have I kind of integrated that with the rarity, but I also think that a lot of birding has a collector mentality. People in their life lists and, you know, they're crazy to check things off. There's this real collector's mentality. And so I wanted to bring that to my NFT collection.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
Let's just talk about, I'll go back for those on listening, if we do the audio, looking at some of the representations. Now, there's obviously a macaw that looks like a pratt-and-cole or a plover. That looks like a gull, a woodpecker, a hornbill.
Yep.
Maybe what
Ooh,
have we
let's see
got?
if you
This
get
could
this
be
one.
a bunting or
Nope.
something. That looks
It's
like a
a
hummingbird.
this is the non-passerine collection. So think
Okay.
non-passerine.
Okay,
I'm gonna
there's a
test it.
penguin. There's a pelican. Okay, so the you've determined that there's going to be a collection of 500 birds
5,000.
and 5,000. Beg your pardon. Thank you. The design, how you're modelling them on actual species,
Yeah.
and some of them are a conglomeration of a family or something. Okay, but are you using an AI tool or something to?
No, I'm hand drawing everything.
So you're hand drawing. Okay, I wanted to clearly get to that. And do you determine the name and everything for them, or is that part of the community? Like, is the
So let
community
me
helping
explain
out with
how generative art works. So a lot of people when there's AI generated art, which is like you type in language and it produces an image. Then there's these generative art projects. Usually what they're based on is an artist developing 200 different images, 500 different optional traits, and then a programmer writing a program where those can be combined in unique ways. So I'm drawing 120 birds. And for each of the birds sort of families, like you've just noticed that there's the pelican and there's a courser and other birds like that. For each of those, there's going to be a set of optional traits that I've also drawn, and then there's optional colors that I've also designed. But it's not me who's going to combine those by hand. It's the program that's going to combine them in unique ways. So there's a piece that is programmed, and that's the generative art piece. And then there's the piece that the artist does, which is, those drawings, machine did not draw those.
Yeah, yeah, great. So the machine portion of it, or the technology portion of it, is what gives it its randomness and its uniqueness, that you can't subconsciously replicate if you sit down to do it again. Okay, so
like I could create, if I had several years, probably create a collection of 5,000 that looks very similar. Through just individually doing each of those pieces. But the rarity, even like, so for example, like I have green legs, pink legs, yellow legs. I've written up a chart that gets integrated into the program that says green legs is going to be 70% of the collection, pink is going to be 20, yellow is going to be 10, and blue is going to be 1% of the collection. So for every single trait that you see, I've developed a rarity concept around it.
Yeah, and is that based on any bit of fact, or that about the relative abundance of those colors within that genus or family, or you
no. So the only way that I'm making it sort of have a fidelity to real world birds is in the images themselves. And I'm really happy that you were able to identify so many of those. The one that you guessed was a bunting is actually a roller. And then the one that you said, the Pratt and Cole is actually a courser, but I think
courser, which you say potato, I say potato.
Same, yeah, same group. And so what I really want to do, and the reason why I made them like that, is because despite the cosmic colors and features, like a pelican could have a head crest in Ornithia, but it won't in real life, is because I really want this to, even the images themselves, to be educational. So I want people to be able to who spend a lot of time in front of their computer, gamers, people who are into NFTs and Discord, to actually like know their bird, get to know it. And maybe they've never in their life heard of a Pratt and Cole, a courser, a tern, but then they see that bird in real life or in a documentary and they recognize that's a tern, which is exactly why like I was very inspired by the style of scientific illustrations. And you can see that they're all drawn from a, profile point of view. They're all very recognizable, but they're a little stylized. And then the colors are what I'm having a lot of fun with. And same with the features. So there's going to be birds that, you know, don't have wattles or crests in real life that are going to have wattles and crests in Ornithia. But the overall bird is going to be recognizable. And because people have their birds named, that's exciting, because then they'll say, oh, I know what a barbet is. I know what a sparrowhawk looks like, you know?
Or the great utility of the project that I see is that people who don't know what any of these things are might see the collection, because they're NFT adjacent. You know, they're in the sort of crypto. They're interested in blockchains, and they go, oh, wow, there's so many different types of birds, and then they might then translate that interest into real world science and
that's
conservation
exactly,
and so I see it as being a good way to connect with people who are, you know, 30, 40 years younger than me.
and also, I mean, I'll tell you, like, how part of the inspiration for, like, just me using NFTs or thinking about NFTs as a conservation tool, you know, there was a paper that came out a couple years ago around, like, the craze around Pokemon Go. And somebody wrote this paper, like, how can we leverage Pokemon Go for birding? And the reason why was because it was like, this game has gotten, you know, millions of youngsters out into nature looking for these, you know, Pokemon Go's, but also in the process, they're seeing real world animals. And how do we get people to be passionate about that? And that was kind of one of those moments for me where I really realized, like, you know, in conservation, we're a lot of the times very old school. And also a lot of the times we're an echo chamber. We talk to the people who already believe in these ideas, who already care about nature. But how can we use other tools and other mediums like technology and like Pokemon Go, like gaming, like NFTs, to reach other people and expand our audience? Because we're really not succeeding in conservation in reaching the people that we need to. And so I think that this is a really great way to kind of break out of that echo chamber and kind of also start using some unique tools to really reach a different audience. And I already feel like it's working, because I see in my Twitter feed, you know, a lot of people who, you know, didn't know or care about birds at all are starting to, because, like, they're involved in my community and because they're having fun with me, they're starting to tag me in, like, videos about birds or funny memes about birds, and or starting to take pictures outside and put them in the Discord and say, like, look what I saw today. And that's really, really exciting and encouraging for me.
I've always been wondered why the AI and the ability for, you know, well, what is it? Not Google Image. What is it? Where now?
Oh, Google Lens.
Yeah, Google Lens. Why those sort of abilities haven't been gamified for bird watching?
Yeah.
And so I'm waiting for someone to do that. You know, this.
Well, there's some really cool bird identification apps that are getting better and better.
Yeah. No, well, for hardcore identification stuff, fantastic. But I've wondered why someone hasn't put that into something like Pokemon Go for kids, so that you can just put the geography. Someone could select their geography where they are now, and it would then randomize maybe 20 bird species, randomize points, and say, right, go out and point at, you know.
Oh yeah, that's a cool idea.
Baltimore Oriole, 500 points, right?
Yeah.
Prothonotary Warbler, you know, 1,000,000 points, you know. So very much modelling on Pokemon Go and comparative rareness, you know, and so there you go.
So that's kind of one of the concepts, is that I really want, you know, really this is like an educational NFT project. It's also like an impact NFT project. I haven't launched yet, but when I sell, you know, hopefully, fingers crossed, the collection sells out. there will be like a full 20 to 25% that we're going to set aside for conservation work. So there's the impact, there's education.
Let's hold on to that. Let's hold on to that thought for a minute, because first, there's still a couple of things, just basic NFT stuff we need to talk about. How do you create an NFT?
Right. So, okay. So first there's the image, right? And then also, to answer your earlier question, sorry, about the naming, is that the names actually are also part of a generator. So I've come up with like thousands of adjectives, and then we'll pick a feature of the bird. So this is where the program comes in. The program will pick like, okay, a random feature like the wing. What color is the wing? Green. Okay, there's 20 adjectives for green. Then it's going to say emerald winged. And then there's a whole set of adjectives that are creative there. And then the end is going to be based on the body of the bird. So, the Pratt and Cole might be also a courser. For the hawk, it might be hawk, ghost hawk, sparrow hawk, eagle. So for each of those, there's a whole set, like a huge Excel spreadsheet that I've developed, but then the programmer actually has to come in and use that to create a name generator.
Yeah. So that's the second, or sort of the third step, to actually create an NFT. Once you've come up with a design and name and everything, to actually make the NFT. So to
transfer it from being an image to an NFT. So all of that background, all of the generative art, the generative naming, that all happens before it becomes an NFT. So then I'm going to come in and I'm going to review by hand every single one of those images and then say, okay, yes, this is blockchain ready. And then what happens is when you go to mint as a user, you press mint and it will randomize. That Solana uses something called a candy machine, because you can think of it as like a gumball machine with all the NFTs swirling around, and one comes out, and then that becomes your NFT. And so now that is authenticated on the blockchain, and it also has so it's like that belongs to you forever after that. That NFT is logged in time on the Solana blockchain, and it comes with a smart contract that has like the terms, which is kind of like the certificate of authenticity, but also some sort of usage terms, like, do you own the IP rights to this image, for example? And, how can you use it? Is it still the founders, or is it yours, in certain ways? Like, so I think there's a lot of like, metadata that goes into that NFT and that smart contract. But once you mint it during launch, that's when it becomes yours. And that's also when it becomes an NFT.
So you mentioned Solana. One of the things I've always been worried about with the whole crypto and mining space is the insane amount of power that it takes to run the blockchain, basically, to create whatever it is, be it a coin, cryptocurrency, or something like an NFT. Now, it's a difficult conversation to have in a couple of minutes. So
well, I can definitely try to address it, and then, or I can also come back. But I think one of the most important things is what you're describing, or all of these are transactions on the blockchain, and so for every transaction,
and because it's distributed, it's not one computer doing work; it's thousands of computers working to create and validate and then confirm the transaction. And that's why it's difficult to just have a short conversation about it, because it's a very complex thing.
Yeah. So that's what you're describing is kind of like the mining process, and the transaction. But so most NFTs today are living on Ethereum and Solana, and Bitcoin is how that's a cryptocurrency. So there's also a currency for Ethereum. There's also a native currency to Solana, but that's different than NFTs.
But it's all on the same architecture, and that's why I'm pulling them.
It's all blockchain, and that's why I think probably the catch-all term would be like transactions. And so Solana uses something called proof of history rather than proof of stake or proof of work, which is the other sort of mechanisms. And so each of these have kind of an associated energy consumption, but Solana is remarkably energy efficient. So for each transaction, each NFT that gets minted, that's about the equivalent of 2 Google searches. And then Solana as a company has decided to take on carbon neutrality. And so they've done so many offsets that they've actually achieved as a company carbon neutrality. So for my NFT project, I think it made sense to launch on Solana because of that sustainability concept. But Ethereum, you guys might know or might not know this, but there's what's called the big Ethereum merge that's actually happening tonight. And the concept is to move from one proof mechanism to another. And in the process, they're going to be eliminating 99% of the energy associated costs. So Ethereum is about to be, as of literally today, which is why this conversation is so timely, is going to become energy efficient. And so, you know, even I came up with this idea to launch on Solana, but if this all goes smoothly, I could just as easily launch on Ethereum and not really have to feel worried about the energy consumption.
And there's 2 issues there, or actually there's really 3, but let's pass them out a little bit. Bitcoin is not moving away from its energy hungry ways, so we'll just leave that alone. But
right. But I will say something that actually is encouraging to me about Bitcoin is the fact that it's so energy intensive actually to mine Bitcoin that the majority of people who are mining Bitcoin have to do it using sustainable energy or renewable energy, because otherwise they would like go broke from paying energy costs.
Yeah, but that's like saying, here's my view of it at the moment. Bitcoin is not essential, right? And so far, I'm not saying it won't, and it can't, but so far, it has not proven itself to be anything that offers real utility. And again, that's a subjective term that I'm using for the community in general, other than negative climate impacts, right? I'm generalizing and being provocative.
I mean, I'm not sure that I disagree, that I agree with you, just because I think that for like, if Bitcoin were actually taking up a massive amount of energy that is producing, fossil fuels or consuming fossil fuels, it's actually not. It's the majority is using solar energy and other energy forms,
but it's competing in a market. Most of us have electricity markets, right? And it's competing. So that means other consumers who have got to cook their food, warm their feet, heat their water, are perhaps consuming bad energy. But the point I'm getting at is so far nowhere in my life that I can look around is Bitcoin making a difference to anything other than drug dealers and whatnot. They're the people using it, tax avoidance and whatnot.
I'm not sure. Again, like I'm not sure I agree with that, but I mean, we don't have to get into a big debate.
No. I'm being really, really general about it. And I'm on board with all the possibilities, right? I'm on board with all the possibilities. I just want someone to point to me that this is when I'll become a convert, and I'm hoping you're going to be the one, right? That you're going to be the one who says this is what we did. But there's people out there who got massively wealthy by buying Bitcoin. When I bought one, and I got rid of it, but I bought Bitcoin at $17, right?
Oh, wow.
Right? But I didn't hang on to it. I got out because I couldn't buy a coffee with the bloody thing. I couldn't buy anything in Australia, pretty much, with what I had. And I thought, yeah, this is fun. And I'm going back, I don't know, 2012? 13,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, must be, yeah.
Right?
For it to have been that price, yeah.
It's a long time back. and it went to 30, right? And I thought, this is all right. And I got rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Actually, I had 3 Bitcoin, right?
Oh, wow.
And I used to talk with my coffee guy who had started mining, right?
Uh-huh.
And he was mining on and he had 4 computers set up, and his power consumption went up, and the bills went up, and he started to think it's not worth it, right?
Right.
I don't know whether he continued. I've lost touch with him. I don't know whether he continued and whether he's a multi-billionaire now. But he certainly hasn't, that I can tell. If he did make billions of dollars, I haven't seen him do anything good with the money.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen Peter Thiel do anything good with the money, right? So that
You want to close?
That's
do you
the
wanna
point I'm
close
making.
my
I haven't
website
seen.
window so I can see you better.
Sorry.
I'm trying to. Do you want to close the website window because I'm trying to look at you?
Oh yeah.
Because we're not talking about the website right now.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah,
So there's been amazing wealth generated with the uptake of, or the upturn in the market with Bitcoin. Admittedly, people have lost about half of that value, but they had that value, right? It's like saying I had $30, then I had $250,000. Now I have $180,000.
right.
I've still got a shitload of money.
Yeah. The only
Right?
people who really lose are the ones who bought at the top, but
That's
even
right.
they might win again if they hold.
That's right.
So
But I'm still not seeing the Bitcoin conservation movement. I'm seeing plenty of people doing other stuff, but most of it's not stuff which me, and it's subjective, I haven't seen anyone fund a hospital from Bitcoin, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen anybody feed, and these people have made so much money they could wipe out the hunger problem in a lot of parts of the world, but it's not happening.
I hear you on the fact that isn't that
but
the
people
case?
are avoiding tax, and
people?
people are buying guns and drugs and capitalising criminal networks. Of course, we don't have the data for it because people don't keep data on illegal stuff, but all the people who know about this stuff are saying it's a problem.
Well, I guess I have a few things to say in response.
Yeah, go. I've had my say. Go.
Yeah, so I think, well, the first thing is that I guess just conceptually, I think that, most people who are wealthy and who become millionaires and billionaires are not doing do-gooder things with their money. So that's kind of just a general statement. So whether it's coming from your company or whether it's coming from the stock market or Bitcoin, people just in general are not using their wealth for the right causes.
Right. So
that's not specific to Bitcoin.
I'll just stop you there, right? Because I agree with you absolutely 100%. But that's one of the reasons that Bitcoin was marketed, about all the things it could do and all the good it was going to decentralize capital and all. None of that has happened. It's concentrated. It's just same old, same old. That's the only point I'm making. I'm not saying,
so it's kind of like
I'm not saying Bitcoin is bad. I'm saying Bitcoin did not do the things that we were told way back when that it would do. It didn't.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, but also a lot of
and let's not be unfair to Bitcoin. Crypto.
No,
right?
I just also think that's true for most companies. They start out having really noble missions and then they become wildly successful and it's no longer that do-gooder mission anymore. So I don't think
you're an exploitative bastard, you're an exploitative bastard, right?
Right. But the unique thing about, I guess, Bitcoin is that it's decentralized. So there is no head person who's running the show, who's winning. It is a lot of individuals who were investors in it. But the second point
they all just consolidated, didn't they? How many? I think now there's only for all the places you can buy and get cash out and whatnot, not cash out as in ATMs, but the actual transactions where they all happen and you can actually turn a Bitcoin into money, Coinbase and all that kind of stuff. Isn't there only about
Oh,
options?
no, there's lots of Bitcoin exchanges. I
But aren't
mean,
they all owned and conglomerated by the same financial institutions that they were all railing against?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know really enough about that, but I do think that Bitcoin is one of the very few of the blockchains that actually is very, very decentralized. And through decentralizations, they actually have some weaknesses, but they're the most decentralized. Whereas, for example, Solana is more centralized, but they have managed to do things like become carbon neutral, for example.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's kind of
that's a
trade-offs
massive
there
plus. That's
with
a
the
massive plus.
yeah, with the decentralization, there's like costs and benefits. But I think what you were saying about your friend who's Bitcoin mining, I do think that that's a little bit like of what was happening in the early days of Bitcoin mining. It's no longer, I mean, most people who are Bitcoin mining have like a huge amount of land that has a lot of solar panels. They're not on the energy grid. They're kind of off the grid and they're just mining Bitcoin, and that's a source of income. And that's separate from the people who make money on Bitcoin mining are very different than people who made money on Bitcoin investing. So that's another distinction.
And let's pick up on that point too. In the old days, you could have 4 or 5 old computers, put them to work and mine. But as more Bitcoins were mined, the nature of the blockchain means that you actually need more computing power, therefore more power to mine the same little percentage of a Bitcoin. So it doesn't scale in the way that we usually think about scaling. It's actually the opposite effect. The more Bitcoin there is, and because it's a finite product, right, there can only be so many in the end, unless they change the algorithm, which they might do, which will then change the scarcity equation. But that's part of the problem why small miners can't mine anymore. Only these massive server farms and everything can mine now, which again,
that has changed. Which again, that's not a very it is sort of going away from the individual miners.
That's
to
right.
Conglomeration.
And the reason I'm talking about it is that nobody is talking about that. They're still having the people who are proponents of schemes to get you to buy into it are still peddling the decentralization and whatnot. Well, if you need $4 million or $20 million to get into mining, it's not bloody the democratization of capital
for most people is ever going to be coming from the mining. I think the benefit for most
that's right. It's past
investing.
That's right. It's past.
But those are two separate things. The investing in Bitcoin can still be lucrative, and the mining of Bitcoin is a separate thing. That's for people who want to devote themselves to that. But they're
still peddling that line about it being democratization. Now it's just a commodity, isn't it?
Yeah, I do think it still has decentralization going for it, but there are also plans for like a Lightning Bitcoin network that would be much more energy efficient. But in general, the reason why, and it's not because I'm, a Bitcoin maxi or a big, believer in, like, I definitely am really a fan, and I see NFTs as a way of the future, but I feel less strongly about cryptocurrency necessarily.
And NFTs and crypto are not the same thing.
They're not the same thing. Yeah. So that's really
it's only the process of creating them or maintaining them that
they both live on the blockchain. So they have the structure in common, but then there's not all blockchains are the same. And now there's hundreds of different blockchains with different native currencies for each of them. And so one thing that I wanted to mention about like the reason why I feel this way is not because I'm a Bitcoin maxi necessarily. It's because I think that, the media talking about like how harmful Bitcoin is and how energy consumption, to me, this is like just a distraction. It's a huge distraction against like the problems that are so real and pressing in the biodiversity crisis, in the climate crisis. This is like an easy target to kind of hate on this very specific thing that like a group of like niche believers are into, but it's such a distraction for the real problems that we're facing in conservation that like that's the part that I have a problem with, is that the more people like spend their time and energy being like against Bitcoin, against cryptocurrency, the more they're not focusing on the things like they should be against, like domestic cats being outside and like really easy solutions that like we really need to focus on. And it's just such a distraction. And I always wonder like why certain issues get so much media press over others. But this is one that I feel like is just consistently like a distraction.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And by the way, on Monday afternoon, we did the Domestic Cats show.
Oh, you did?
Okay? Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, look,
like, why isn't like plant-based diets and keeping your cats indoors? Like, why aren't these things the things that people are talking about in the media? And why is like Bitcoin become like persona non grata?
You know the answer to that, don't you?
Yes, I do. But that's exactly why.
The answer is that the same companies that own the media are the people who benefit from the advertising and the whole financial structure of the companies that are doing the bad things. And if everybody can talk about Bitcoin, I mean, hell, I've just raised a whole lot of the issues, but I'm not against Bitcoin, but I'm against the people who are promoting it as a cure-all. It's just another thing, right? It's just another thing.
Yeah.
Right?
To me, the reason why I don't like to kind of go down that path is just because I would rather talk about the things that I think do deserve like that much media attention.
Let's go to the positive stuff first. I just want to bring one thing up too, because there's a whole lot of coins out there. There's a whole lot of crypto blockchain enthusiasts and whatnot, and it's getting a bad name. And hell, I've been going on about it with this whole process that a lot of these coins and the decentralized markets and whatnot. And I know an NFT collection is different, but still, people can still create them, manage them in secret, if you like, with the wallets and everything. No one knows who's owning what. Or can an NFT collection, and I'm not saying yours, okay, because again, people are people. Can somebody set one up? Like, I don't know, all these celebrities have all done their little NFT collections and they pump them up and they get the celebrities to endorse them, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden the project dies.
Yeah.
How can an NFT, so you get in, you buy in at $5,000 and then all of a sudden no one wants to buy them. So I like what you said about the community and the fun. You're not telling people that your NFT collection is an investment, right? It might be.
I think of it as like when I offer the utility, I'm offering a utility that is community based, it's education based, it's impact based. But yeah, I think the answer, to your question, the difference between those celebrity project or what, we call like the hyped projects is really it's community. And some hyped projects do end up providing community. So for example, Bored Ape Yacht Club is one that, if you think of a Venn diagram, there's like the celebrity or the hyped projects, and then there's the projects that are offering a real community. There is an overlap in the middle. It's not everything. So there's a lot that don't have the community and that fail and that overpromise. And then there's a lot that have the community but aren't great investments. They're not making a lot of money. They're just great communities. But there is a section in the middle of things that are bringing a huge benefit monetarily, changing people's lives, but also provide you this great community that you can be a part of. And I think that middle part is like the golden zone that I think most people, at least for me, that's like the goal is to kind of be in there where the holders would benefit and also be able to make money on this and have that as an asset, but also be like really excited and invested to be part of this community.
Yeah.
And it is like, I would say, I can absolutely point to projects that are in that middle zone, but I can also definitely point to the ones that just have the celebrity backing and are hyped and that, sell for really high and then crash.
The difference with your project, apart from the fact that it's about birds and you want to do good stuff, is that this is your project. You're invested in it, right? You're not being paid $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, $500,000, $1 million to say this is great. So therefore, if bird nerds come together and conservation friends and everything get into this and are sharing other information and experiences, then it has utility and it has value.
Yep.
And the only reason I'm bringing it up again and again is it's not an investment the same way that your house is an investment these days, even though buying a house is a risk, right?
Yep.
So people need to be aware of those kind of things.
And if you're using NFTs just purely for investment, what they call like, flippers, like people who buy and sell in the same way that people buy and sell real estate, I think NFT flippers were doing a lot better before the crypto crash, but there are still a lot of NFT investors and flippers, and they're probably not going to be like targeting a project like mine because I don't have that hype and it doesn't look. What I'm hoping is that actually my holders are, my NFT buyers are going to hold that asset and they're going to want to keep it and they're not going to be changing hands all the time. But I think
then hopefully the scarcity that if you need an NFT, one of your collection, to participate in events or go to, be they virtual events or real world events or get merch or whatever it is, that's the payoff. Not
absolutely. Like it's very clear when you look at like the the community-led projects that are very like did slow organic growth. They have great communities. You could definitely feel a difference. And most people are there not because they think that they're going to buy and flip this, but I think that obviously people like to make money. They like to see the NFTs doing well. And so I think like when you are coming in as an NFT investor or flipper, you really have to see NFTs as like a speculative asset. It's like it's sort of like, is this going to be successful? What am I predicting is going to be the next success? And it's much more like trading stocks. Whereas if you're coming in as a community member or an investor and somebody who wants to like actually invest in a community and learn, that's like a very different mindset.
Yeah.
And so
we'll talk about the community in a minute, right, on the and the different levels. But what I want to ask you first, because people are going to ask about the proportion of the I don't want to say price, but that's in effect what it is to get involved. You're going to put towards real world projects or I mean it's hard to know exactly what you're planning to do. But
so I can explain that.
Yeah, give us an idea of the scope. Because there's 5,000 that will go into it. Can you expand it if 5,000 are taken up? Can you do a second collection that hangs off?
Yeah, absolutely. That's my plan.
Yeah,
so the first 5,000, and this is another like bird world analogy that you'll appreciate, but my first collection is 5,000 and it's the non-passerine collection, and it's very similar to the real world bird numbers. And the second collection, if the first one is a success, is going to be the passerines. So so none of the birds in this first collection are going to be passerines. Yeah. Which is why like I've had a lot of people ask me for crows or cardinals, and I'm like, nope, you have to wait for the passerine collection. Yeah, not yet. And so this first collection is, based on that. And then, yeah, absolutely. There's so much. I mean, I'm really excited for actually like after the launch because there's so much more I want to do to grow out this project and continue to build the community. But if you're asking about price, like I don't have a fixed price in mind. And I also don't have a fixed launch date. And a lot of the reason why I don't have either of those is because I want to be community led and kind of follow what makes sense for my community. I had always
I wasn't really looking for dollar values or anything like that. I was more thinking about what when it comes to making a difference and positive outcomes and all those kind of things. Apart from the community, I mean, have you got projects or research in mind or anything that you are thinking about supporting?
So that's kind of linked with the price, which is why I brought that up. So like I'm planning as of now to sell each NFT for the equivalent of something between $50 and $100. So if you think of a collection of 5,000, there's a certain percentage that's going to go to me and the other team members. That's going to go towards a community fund to keep building the project, business development costs. That 25% is going to be significant if the collection sells out. And what I've always wanted to do, which is part of how I started this project in the first place, is that I've always wanted to start my own nonprofit. And so this fund is going to be sort of the startup cost for that nonprofit. Now, what's really exciting is that I've always had the idea for what I wanted to do for a nonprofit. It's like kind of a niche conservation concept that I wanted to use this funds to kind of set aside to funnel into that nonprofit. But what's really exciting is that as I've talked to the community members who are getting more excited and involved about the project, and they hear about that, they actually want to get involved in the development of the nonprofit also. So I think it's a really great opportunity for a lot of community members that I'm, finding and that are showing up in my Twitter spaces and in my Discord. They're just animal enthusiasts. They have totally different, diverse day jobs. This is not what they're doing, or they're birders. And they're just really excited to, play a role in the creation of a nonprofit, a conservation nonprofit, in a way that most people wouldn't be able to do. Like if I were to have started this not with this community and just through, like, let's say a grant, I would probably only be hiring and having involved community members from my conservation and professional network, people who have conservation experience. But what's really cool here is that people who don't have that experience actually have the chance to kind of jump in and play a role because they're so excited and enthusiastic about, the birds and the conservation world that, why not take this a step further and kind of take some of those same community members and bring them over to the creation of this nonprofit.
So have you got a thought in mind what the non-profit would be?
I do.
Focused on? Yeah. Well,
I can tell you my concept because I've had this I've wanted to do this for probably 8 years now. But because I have, a normal job and not any startup capital, this is kind of almost, in some ways, you can think of this NFT project as also, in addition to having its own intrinsic value, to also being kind of like a Kickstarter for a nonprofit. And so the concept that I've always wanted to explore is animal vehicle conflict. So, I mean, roadkill is like one of the biggest sources of mortality worldwide for animals. And it's one that we're barely doing anything about. And
the allied parts of that, like just crossovers, animal access, underpasses, overpasses.
That's exactly what this nonprofit is meant to be. So what I'd like to do is,
we've got to get you on to talk with Daryl Jones, and this is his thing. He's on a world tour book launch thing at the moment but that's his thing. He would,
I mean, this is something I feel like is, I mean, when I was first thinking of like what aspect of conservation, do I want to work with? And I was thinking of trying to find something that is like sort of ignored for the most part. I think this is a huge source of mortality that not a lot of people are working to mitigate. So that's one. The other is concrete. Like you can measurably say the difference between the amount of mortality in this hotspot of the road before versus after a tunnel or a bridge or even stop signs or speed bumps. And then the other thing that I really love about is that there's just this like,
and then there's
concrete
runoff,
data.
water infiltration, all those things affect.
And then there's also the links to links to science. So I always have wanted to, I mean, with my science background, I've always wanted to do a very science-based approach. And I think and another thing I feel strongly about is citizen science. So getting an app where people are identifying roadkill hotspots. And then we come in as a nonprofit and implement whatever mitigation measure makes sense for what species are being hit and why.
And use the data that gets collected to pressure the decision makers and the policy makers.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you see what's happening? Look what's happening to me.
You're smiling?
I mean, you're talking the language that I've always wanted to hear coming out of this space, and why I've been super skeptical. But it's about motivation, right? It's like, it's why I kept coming back before about it's just a thing, and people are people. It's not actually really new. It's a different way of doing things. But if you give people the means and they are committed and they use the means to do good stuff, I'm on board, right? I'm with it.
Yeah. And honestly, I think you'd be surprised at how many NFT collections are really in that category. And the ones that get the attention, obviously, are the ones that are the celebrity run, the big hyped project. Something is going to make news when somebody pays some astronomical amount for a JPEG. All of these things are they're the ones that are getting the attention. But if you're really in this world the way I am, and you're in the depths of Twitter and Discord, the majority of what I see are really well-intentioned projects, people who have really great missions, people who are really, incredible artists with great ideas, great intentions, great plans for what they're going to do if this succeeds, great communities. So I think that what makes me sad about NFTs is that, in kind of trying to talk to my really large network of conservationists, birders, is that the first and only thing people know and hear about is NFTs are bad for the environment or NFTs are a scam. And I think it's a real shame, because I think like I explained earlier, when I look at something like gaming or Pokemon Go, I'm like, here's this great opportunity and people aren't using it. And that's how I feel about NFTs. It's this amazing opportunity that we can leverage as a unique conservation tool and a unique educational tool. And I think that unfortunately, a lot of that bad press and those bad impressions just kind of make people immediately turn away from it before actually really digging in. And so that's why I really appreciate you inviting me here and having the time to actually get into depth on this, because I really think that it's a great opportunity. And my project is I'm a big believer in my project and can talk about why it's so exciting for conservation all day, but I'm not the only one. There are a lot of really great causes out there that have NFT projects backing them.
And hey, we're all susceptible to what we see and hear all the time. I'm no different, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure if I dug deep, I'm sure we could find a reason to say that gaming is bad, right? Because look at all the power that Xbox boxes and Nintendos and PlayStations are using, right?
Yep.
It doesn't have to be bad because people are sitting in their rooms and locked away from society, which is the common thread that everyone says, or they're all violent and they all want to kill each other.
Right.
But we could probably apply the power thing there. Look, Bitcoin's new. The only reason I rail against the whole thing is that it was painted as a cure-all for a whole lot of problems.
Right.
And for a lot of people, it was a scam right from the beginning. But that's no different to every other commodity market that's been
exactly. That was kind of the point, is it doesn't really stand
that
out in those ways.
so that's my point. It's not all the stuff isn't new. It's just the application to use something new and do something new in a different way
Right.
to achieve something good. So yeah, look, I'm on board, right? I'm on board.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
uh, we'll have to continue the other all the other angles, and maybe go more into a deep dive about the minting and recording the new species and all that.
Yeah, I would love to tell you
down
more
the
about
line.
like the lore behind Ornithia, because
Yeah,
one of
well, there's so much more.
yeah, yeah,
And even I'm really limited. I mean, I've just taken up too much of the time. Let's talk again and and go over the community when you're a bit closer to launch date, and we can really do that, and maybe we can get some people involved, because I think we really need to talk about all the different. I don't want to call them levels. Let's call them roles or interests or whatever, and whatnot. So I think we've probably got another hour and a half just in that, right?
yeah, because I could definitely talk more about like,
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that I do want to mention is that like I think that one of the great utilities of this project is that it is a world building project, and so every participant who becomes a member of the community is actually considered to be the discoverer of whatever species they get, and then through that discovery you can actually build out like, what does this bird do, in a very similar way to how real world scientists collect data on birds.
I'm really interested in the possible crossover with sort of real world naturalist, citizen science activities. So let's wrap about that next time. But because you're a first time guest and you're a bird nerd, I have to hit you with the bird emergency questions, right?
Okay.
So first thing, as an avid birder, are you keeping? Do you keep a list? Are you a?
I do. Yeah. I have a list.
Do you know your number?
I think I'm at like 445.
Okay, so you're a pretty you're a very nerdy. You're at one extreme end of the spectrum. People who know their number are right up there. So are you?
Oh, yeah.
Are you checking off things every day? Like, are you?
No.
Have you got a house? Have you got a house list or a patch?
I'm definitely lucky enough to be able to have traveled to some really amazing places that are super bird diverse. So I've kind of like gotten these big chunks of like birds all in one shot.
Yeah.
So yeah, and obviously a lot of them when I was catching birds in the Amazon, that was like a big,
So you've got a lot of ticks that some people will never have. I'll have to get you involved in hashtag first seen and heard every morning. First bird you hear. First bird you see, you just tell.
Oh, I know. It's gonna be these house finches, because they live outside of my door, and I see them every single day.
Good. Yeah. Just tell.
They're amazing. They're super
just
cute.
do it. I get the European blackbird just about every morning. It's first heard.
Oh. Well, sometimes I get ruby-throated hummingbird. I feed both of them on my balcony, so I see both of them.
That's pretty good. And of course, it will change over the year with the.
Oh no, sorry, not ruby-throated. Anna's hummingbird. Okay. I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking. Yeah, Anna's.
I'll have to link there.
Yeah.
Are you using a particular field guide or an app? Like, are you old school, or are you?
Oh yeah, no, I have like 20 field guides on my bookshelf. Like, everywhere I go, I use a field guide.
What's your go-to from like your first choice go-to field guide?
Well, for here in California, Sibley's West.
Okay, so it's Sibley's. Good.
Yeah. But like whenever like I have a birds of Peru, I have birds of southern India, I have like everywhere I travel, like I'll take like the field guide of that place.
Yeah. Favorite piece of kit, bird kit?
What does that mean?
Well, some people say it's a hat. Some people say it's their notebook. Some people say it's their binoculars. Some people say it's their
of my birding.
Some people say it's their mobile phone for checking off their list on eBird.
Yeah, definitely the binoculars. Yeah.
The binoculars.
Yeah. Yeah,
What do you?
I actually have a little like monocular that I
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
in my
yep,
purse
yep.
because I'm like, there have been so many times where I'm like out in the world and I definitely don't carry my binoculars with me,
Yeah.
like just in the city. But I'm like, I need to see something like a lot closer. So I have this little monocle, and like a lot of people make fun of me for it.
What's your favourite place that you either have been or do regularly go bird watching? Like, where's the place that you've enjoyed most for going?
Oh, I would say the Western Ghats in India. I've been there several times, and every time I go, I see different birds. And I mean, I definitely think like my favorite place that I've ever done birding would be the Peruvian Amazon, but a place that I've gone to multiple times would be the Western Ghats.
What's your bucket list location that you really want to get
Oh,
to?
I would say Papua New Guinea.
Very nice.
Yeah, for
Birds of
birding.
Paradise is that the attraction? The Birds of Paradise?
It is, but they also have a lot of other really amazing things. Like
Oh,
that's
don't
just a
they?
part of the world that I haven't like Australasia is like not a place that I've ever been birding actually. So I'll just put that on the list because it's like the most biodiverse. But I think that they also have owlet nightjars, which I'm really excited
They
about.
do. So do we here
I
in
know you
Australia.
do. Yeah.
Um,
Have you seen them
uh,
before?
yeah, our one, the grey one that we
Okay.
have down here. Um, um, PNG. I just wanted to ask you whether you had caught up with the news. Did you see that perhaps the PNG Navy, someone in the PNG Navy, has been trafficking wildlife because
No.
they tree kangaroos, birds of paradise,
Yikes.
parrots.
No, I didn't see that. That's
So
really
that
sad.
I heard that on the BBC and overnight. So I'm going to try and look that up and do a
Yeah, that's sad. But
story
I
on
mean,
it.
I'm glad they caught the
Yeah.
person, right? Like the more of these
Well,
people we get out, the
yeah,
better.
it was unclear whether it was actually just one or two people who are in the Navy or whether there was actually an organised effort,
Ooh,
quite a
I hope not.
structural thing, because they were raising piles of money out of it. So,
That's really
yeah,
sad.
yeah,
The
that
tree
is a
kangaroos are like another reason why I'd want to go to
yeah,
PNG for
yeah.
sure.
No, that's a whole other problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, you didn't ask favorite bird.
uh, well, we're getting there. First, I want to have your bucket list bird. What's the?
Um, bucket list bird is the Sri Lankan frogmouth.
Oh, very cool, very cool.
I'm
Um,
obsessed with that bird.
oh, very good, very good. Okay, I might have to put a picture of that one in.
Oh, they're amazing.
So, all right. What's your? Um, there's two ways to ask this. What's your favourite bird? But I like to say, what's the best bird?
The best bird. Oh, that might be different. Okay, the best bird I've ever seen, or just the best bird?
Look, the rules are there are no rules, right? So,
Oh man. Okay, that's like getting harder. Let me see. Can I just pick a family?
yeah, people do
Okay,
that.
Caprimulgidae. That's like every bird that's my favorite. The patoos, the frogmouths, the nightjars. Every like bird that I like gravitate towards is in that family. I
I,
love that family.
I was waiting for you to mention the patu.
Yeah, but
Um,
I do think like if I have always like really loved, and I did see a patu when I was in the Ecuadorian Amazon, and like it was one of the best moments of my life because I just never thought that I would see one, and these guides were like, hey, like we found this one's just been in the tree with its baby for like a week, and we came up to it. I love your face right now. And it was so stunning. It was the most incredible thing. And it was doing exactly that,
that's
like
right.
it looked like a tree. I would
That's
have
right.
never in my life been able to identify it if these guys hadn't like known it was there. I would have driven right past it.
Just like our tawny frogmouth here. So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The tawny frogmouths are really amazing too. I mean, yeah, I still like the Sri Lankan better,
yeah.
but I think I've always said that my favorite birds are like the toucanets. I really like the toucanets and the aracari or aracari. I'm not sure how to say it. Is it
Well,
aracari?
look, you're asking the wrong person. I'm a horticulturist, and I pronounce all the plant families wrong all the time. But I
Yeah,
don't
that's
care
like
as
if you're
long as
just
people
reading
know
it,
what
you
you.
don't actually know how to say
Mate,
it.
mate, I know what you're talking about when you say toucanet and when you mention the family. I don't know how to say it, but I know exactly what you mean. That's good enough for me, right?
Yeah.
As long
So
as
yeah, those are my favorites. I'm gonna stick with the Caprimulgidae family.
cool. Well, guess what? As we nearly run out to the time limit, we've made it. Thanks for being part
A
of the
lot of
bird
ground.
emergency and sparring with me on the benefits of
Of
crypto,
course.
blockchain, NFTs. I reckon it's going to be a great project. Twitter and Discourse is where people can best find you,
Yeah.
and the website, which is CosmicBirdsNFT.com. Of course, there'll be links everywhere.
Oh,
You're going to
great.
come back. We
Yeah.
haven't worked out when, but you're going to come back and we'll deep dive into it even
Yeah,
more.
I would love to. Thank you for having me. This has been a really fun conversation.
Oh, it's been a delight to meet you. Look, I'm on board. That's why
Great.
you're coming back. Yeah, I'm on
So
board.
conversion successful?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the big thing for me is that it's not a cure-all for everything. You've got the right attitude about what it can possibly do, and it's not going to change the world, but it might change a couple of people's minds and get some positive stuff going on. Maybe maybe you can develop the app, the Pokemon Go Bird
Yeah, I
ID
mean,
app.
that's the end
Yeah,
stage of my roadmap. If you look at
yeah.
my website, like we all have roadmaps that are kind of like that's kind of the term in the NFT world for like what's your long-term plan. And the last phase of my roadmap is an augmented reality where you would get extra points for identifying real world birds while you're identifying the cosmic birds.
Great. There's a perfect point to end. Stick around after we end because I need to ask you something.
Okay.
Hey, bird nerds. I'm Grant. I'm also a bird nerd. That's Alicia. She's a tech
Also
head,
a nerd.
ornithologist, ecologist, bird nerd too. This has been the Bird Emergency. Check out the links. Join us again next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.